What if I told you there's a crypto token out there that's supposedly designed to only go up in value? Sounds pretty amazing, right? Well, that's the whole promise behind Evervalue Coin, or EVA. It's this project that's been making a ton of waves by linking crypto to a real-world Bitcoin mining operation. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how it's supposed to work and why so many people are asking if it's just a little too good to be true. And that's really the big question, isn't it? Is this thing a genuine, once-in-a-generation opportunity to get in on something new? Or is it a really well-designed trap, built on a mountain of hype and some super slick marketing? Let's get into it. I mean, you can't argue with the hype. Just to give you an idea of how big this got, back in July of 2025, EVA was the #1 most searched crypto in all of Brazil. That's not just a little bit of buzz. That's a signal that we really need to understand what's going on here.
Okay, so let's start with the good stuff. What's the big promise of Evervalue Coin? We're going to lay out the official story, exactly how the project and its biggest fans see it.
So the core idea, the one that got everyone so excited, is actually pretty simple. EVA is a token that claims to be backed by a real physical asset, Bitcoin. And not just any Bitcoin, but Bitcoin that's being freshly generated from a mining operation down in Paraguay. This is meant to give it a solid foundation, unlike so many other tokens that are pure speculation. And just like Bitcoin, they cap the supply at 21 million. So, how is this all supposed to work? Well, they lay it out in 3 basic steps. First, you've got the mining farm in Paraguay cranking out new Bitcoin. Second, a chunk of that new Bitcoin gets sent over to a secure digital vault. And finally, that growing pile of Bitcoin in the vault is what gives all 21 million EVA tokens their value. Simple, right? To get this whole thing off the ground, they had to put some skin in the game. So they kicked things off by putting an initial deposit into that vault. That number was 180 Bitcoin. This was supposed to be the proof, the foundational collateral that gave EVA real, tangible value right from day one. But here's the real kicker. That backing isn't just a one-time thing. It's designed to grow. The team promises that every single month, 12 brand new Bitcoins from the mining operation will be added to that vault. So in theory, this creates what they call a rising floor for the token's value. This is the whole Evervalue idea in a nutshell. A token that's always backed by more and more Bitcoin over time. And this brings us to their #1 selling point, summed up perfectly by one of the project's spokespeople. The idea is, at any time, you can take your EVA, you can burn it, which just means you destroy it, and in exchange, you get your fair share of the Bitcoins sitting in the vault. They claim there are no tricks, no waiting periods, no strings attached. It's your right as a token holder. Okay, so that's the story they're selling. And it sounds pretty good, right? But does the math actually check out? Let's move on and put the marketing talk aside for a second and just run the numbers. This is where things get really interesting. When EVA's market price hit around $8, some analysts started asking a very simple but very important question. When you buy this token, what is the actual value of the Bitcoin that you're getting a claim on? Well, an economist named Felipe Veloso did the math, and wow, the answer was pretty staggering. He calculated that if you bought EVA at $8, you were paying an implied price of about $260,000 for a Bitcoin, all while the actual market price for one Bitcoin at the time was only around $115,000. You are paying more than double for a future promise. Velosa's conclusion really just cuts right to the heart of it. If you're paying this massive premium for an asset you'll get in the future, why on earth wouldn't you just go buy the real thing right now for less than half the price? It's a question that kind of hangs over the whole project. That huge price difference is a major concern for sure. But believe it or not, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper that researchers started to dig into this project, the more red flags they started to find. So let's walk through some of the most serious ones. So independent researchers basically boiled it down to 5 critical concerns. The kind of things that should make any investors stop and think. We're going to break down each one, from who's actually running the show to how they're selling this thing to the public. First up, and this is a big one in crypto. The team is completely anonymous. In a world where trust is basically everything, having a team with no public faces, no track record, that's a huge concern. It means there's no reputation on the line. You just have to take their word for it. Second, the control here is dangerously centralized. A single administrator with a single key can change the rules, change the fees, and, most importantly, can move all of the funds. There's no multi-sig protection, which is kind of like needing multiple keys to open a bank vault. Here, one person holds the only key, and that's a massive, massive risk. Now, you might hear people say, but wait, it has a security audit. And yeah, it does. But the audit is from what's considered a Tier 3 firm, not one of the top dogs. And the fine print is what really matters. The audit only confirmed the code didn't have, catastrophic bugs. It said nothing about the economic model or the huge risks of that centralized control we just talked about. It's a checkmark, but it doesn't really mean the project is safe. Okay, this red flag cuts right to the very heart of the entire project. For all the talk about a mining operation backing this token, there is zero public on-chain proof that the Bitcoin is actually being deposited. Investors are just being asked to trust that the anonymous admin is doing what they say they're doing. And finally, where did all that crazy hype come from? Well, researchers noticed it wasn't really from a grassroots movement of people loving the project. Instead, EVA's fame was built on paid sponsorships, big events, and influencer marketing. And that makes you ask a really critical question. Are you hearing a genuine recommendation, or are you just watching an ad? So, what's the bottom line here? Let's try to weigh that slick promise against these really serious problems and see if we can figure this out. It really comes down to two completely different stories, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the bull case. It's a project backed by real Bitcoin, promoted by big names with a price that's just been soaring. But on the other side, you've got the bear case. It's a token that is mathematically overpriced, run by a totally anonymous team with claims you can't verify and huge security risks. For a lot of crypto veterans, this whole pattern feels eerily familiar. It brings back some pretty bad memories of projects like BitConnect, which was a spectacular collapse that wiped out billions of dollars. In that case, too, you had celebrity endorsements and massive hype being used to cover up a model that was just fundamentally broken. The parallels are pretty hard to ignore. So we'll end by turning the question back to you. When you strip away all the hype and you just look at the evidence, the promise versus the price, the marketing versus the red flags, you're left with one final question to ask yourself. Looking ahead, 5 years from now, do you really believe this project will still be here? The answer to that, well, that might just tell you everything you need to know.